Welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pen Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shanda Gore.
And welcome back to the Pen Leader Podcast. Today, our episode is called Playing to Your Audience. And I have with me Mr. Peter Kharchenko, who has more than 20 years experience as a musician. He's an adjunct professor, he's a freelance performer, and he's the owner of his own studio. He's in a number of bands, and you can see more and hear more from him at AP String Duo. It's a actual YouTube channel where you can see him having performances out in the community that he actually lives in right now. But he does so much in recordings and writes music and performs. And just for the listeners, before we get into where I'm welcoming him, if you're listening to our intros and outros, for those that subscribe to this particular podcast, you would have heard him actually performing an original piece of music, which is Floral Sketches. So I am so excited to have with me Peter Kharchenko. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Gore. Thanks for having me on the show. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. I'm so excited to talk about the fact I get a lot of compliments on Floral Sketches, which is our intro and outro music, and the fact that it's one of a kind, unique, and you wrote it and performed it. It's just wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes. So let's talk about it. You're a leader in the industry of being a musician and being out there and actually doing all this and having your own studio. What are you passionate about when you're talking about music and performing it? What drives you?
I actually get to talk about that quite a lot with my students and my friends. It has to be a passion, it has to be a commitment and a lifelong pursuit. When I do speak to my students, I never suggest do it for the money or do it for recognition or any of those things. It has to be something that you just have to do, and you have to fully commit and figure out how it works. It's a combination of talents, hard work, learning, and also figuring out the social elements of it, like how to get the jobs, how to meet people, how to get the name out there, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. So you're really talking from leadership. You're taking really control of your brand and getting the word out and then doing it for the right reasons.
Yes, and what I did not realize until a little bit later in life is that you are basically a self-sufficient entity. You are a business, even though a lot of people who get into music, they don't know that in the beginning. I don't think anybody does. Think about a kid who just gets a guitar for his or her birthday and gets guitar lessons. They never think about making money with it, or especially running a business or something like that. They just want to play, and all the students of mine or everyone who I observe who is just getting into it, it's very innocent, it's very exciting. They're excited to play, they're excited to learn their favorite song. If they go into, let's say, a music school, and they want to pursue it, then sometimes I wonder, where is that line between just doing it for the love of it, which I guess the word amateur gets a bad rap, but I like to tell everybody the word amateur is actually a beautiful word. That means you're doing it for love. You love what you're doing. You're not concerned with making money with what you're doing. But then on the other side, you have the professional side of it, where you can, where you have the discipline and you're doing things to make a living at it, regardless of whether or not you're loving what you're doing. You're doing it because you just have to, So that's something that a lot of musicians kind of keep in mind. On one side, the love of it, and the other side of it is just
how to monetize and make a living.
Yeah, and the business side of it. So again, I didn't think about it getting into music, but it's a big part of it as well. So,
well, I'm going to throw some statistics at you and get your thoughts on it. Zippia, which is Zippia.com, which is a career expert website, has reports on how many musicians there are out there that are making a living. And they're reporting about 9,600 are out there doing that. And they break down the demographics. But one of the things that's concerning is it looks like the median age is around 44 years old. And then there's a notation about the fact that K through 12 programs are struggling with having monies into arts and music. And I know California passed Proposition 28, which actually helps with pouring a number of like almost $1 billion into their arts and music programs, trying to encourage, because there's just a lack of live musicians, or at least learning live musicians, learning how to go out there and learn an instrument and do that. And you play so many instruments. First of all, what are your thoughts about those statistics?
Well, I do agree that it's harder right now to be a working musician. I'm not sure if I can comment on the age brackets that you have quoted, but I can certainly tell you that as far as it being harder for younger musicians to break into the scene, so to speak, is one of the reasons being that the electronic music is such a big part of our lives now, and realistically for a lot of businesses, or if let's say somebody requests music to be made, it's much easier these days for somebody to just create music on their own, as layer the tracks, use digital software and everything, hiring a band for an event or something like that, that's a lot more work. So, and so same with original music, if musicians want to play their own instruments, and there's several of them, again, that it's just harder to do that than to have just, let's say, a DJ or something like that, Now, all of that has its place, of course, but yeah, also, the pandemic, I think, had a little bit to do with that. I see a lot of work opportunities for solo artists, duo artists. Yeah, definitely harder for larger bands.
To get together and do
that.
Yeah. So you have a history of a number of instruments that you've played. And when I see statistics about, again, an average age of 44 years old, but they're reporting, and may or may not be true, but this is what they're averaging out of those 9,600 that are filling out the surveys. And then you have challenges through K through 12. It's aging. So there's a need to create opportunities for up and coming musicians. And then the challenges you just mentioned. You started playing an instrument back in high school. Is that true? And how did you come about loving and these different instruments, and then learning how to play them?
Yes, that's true. I would say I got into playing in high school. It was also a way to sort of be a part of local community and get involved in performances. Back in high school, we had a battle of the bands. I don't think that's like really a thing anymore. It was very exciting. There was this element of friendly competition. You had a few, we were all friends, but then we had our project and somebody else had another project, and there was a band that was fairly well known and we all looked up to them. One thing that is a little bit different these days is when I speak with my young students and I ask them who do they listen to or who do they look up to, I've noticed that a lot of them don't have artists that they are really, really into. Like, for instance, a guitarist that they really want to sound like, or a bassist that they really look up to. What I try to do on my end to sort of foster that is, sometimes we'll just listen to some music together and we'll try to analyze it a little bit, and they get more excited about it. They'll say, "Oh, that's a great guitar lick. I want to do what they're doing,
Right.
And that could be a gateway. They could say, okay, well, if I like that, let me check out another musician who does that even more. And then, or here's another genre of music that I did not know existed. So it can be a great way to get people to explore. Exploration is a big part of learning, I love pop music a lot, but sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you have to go a little bit deeper and understand, let's say, where pop and rock and blues and jazz came from, like the origins and the language that we all speak, Of course, that can take us on a big journey of exploration of styles and our heritage and everything.
That's very cool. So I know that you play the jazz guitar, you play jazz, you play a Spanish guitar, play a bass, electric bass, you play upright bass, you play the oud. You play so much, and you play in different genres. You just went from one instrument to another. I was trying to count how many instruments you actually play and the different genres of music you play, and it seems like it's several.
Well, there are different avenues in pursuing music, and as far as being a very useful and a very kind of a multi-purpose musician, especially in this city, in this community, you kind of have to know what is the best part, the best role to play in any given situation. A lot of my performances these days are in a duo with a violinist. His name is Aaron Rudder, and we perform quite a lot, and we get to play the music that both he and I are passionate about. Mm-hmm. The styles range, of course, but throughout the night, I could play either a jazz guitar, kind of like a big archtop, which is suitable for anything from blues to swing to even pop tunes. But then for classical music, Spanish, like a nylon string guitar with a much mellower sound and a completely different tonal footprint. Of course, those instruments aren't as good for rock band settings. So for rock band, you would use an electric guitar, and of course, bass is a different instrument altogether, right? Mm-hmm. So growing up, I've always found myself in musical settings, at times playing guitar, other times playing bass. I remember back in high school, I focused on guitar and I was working on my guitar playing a lot, but there were a lot of guitarists and no bass players. I don't think anybody wanted to play the bass. I'm not sure why.
I love the bass.
I love the bass. Absolutely. I remember listening to like James Jamerson or Paul McCartney or Jaco Pastorius, and I would put my ear onto the speaker or any kind of a vibrating surface just to really feel the bass or crank the bass and feel it in my chest. Or one of the first times I went to a live show and felt the power of the bass, I was like, wow, that's really deep, Yeah, again, back to my early experiences. Everybody just played guitar and they wanted to have bands and nobody played bass. So I went out and bought a bass, and then all of a sudden I was in like 5 bands. They weren't like, we're not talking about gigging bands, right? They were like garage bands. But all of a sudden it was like, oh, did you hear about this guy? He got a bass. Now we have completed our lineups, And that stuck with me. And now I do a lot of work at my studio. For now, we're calling it 5810 Studio. Kind of by those living in Toledo might remember the Southwick Mall. Been torn down since. Now it's
5810, so that's a really cool studio name. And it has your address in there, so people can find you. But I love the fact that you're recording. You have a number of individuals who are with you in this venture that are really helping to make music and to help others make music. I think there's something very rich about leading others into this opportunity of saying you can do it. I know I've seen you firsthand encourage individuals who this is not their first profession, and to help encourage them to explore, to become eclectic in the music genres. I know that from personally that having an interaction with you concerning even the bass has really expanded even how you think. And there's something said about doing something creatively on that side of the brain to help open up and to be able to think differently. I think music opens up, arts open that up, and statistically and research shows that. Can you talk a little bit about what you would suggest? You play in front of live audiences. What you would suggest for those that have a little stage fright when something goes wrong and they're up in front of a group of individuals, it could be thousands of individuals watching. Any advisement you would have for those that get that stage fright and whatever they're doing?
Well, the one thing that a person probably can't really fake is the experience, right? So we just want to get that out of the way, right? All the advice that can be given, all the logical thinking can just dissipate if the nerves take over too much. But it's definitely a good idea to stay relaxed, to stay positive, to not let your brain kind of spiral out of control, I definitely have had plenty of situations where things did not go as planned. That can happen even if you double or triple check everything, just a string can still break, like a brand new string can still break. That has happened. Or, power, there have been times where everything's good and then power goes out or something like that. It's a good idea to stay on your toes and think quickly about what is the creative thing a person can do at the moment. I can think of a quick situation, not to take up too much time, but as far as power going out, there was a situation where it was a wedding. It was a big deal, and it was the first dance, it was like, the bride and the groom, first dance, beautiful song that was played on recording, like the sound system. And then, yeah, the power went out. And it wasn't our fault, it wasn't anybody else's fault, but it was definitely an awkward moment. So the singer of the band just started belting the song out. Luckily, it was a song that he knew. And again, he wasn't supposed to be singing it, but he just started singing it. And then we, as the musicians, we were sort of waiting to see what will be the next thing that was going to happen. And when the power did come on, we were able to jump in on our instruments. And everybody thought that we planned it that way. And everybody thought that it was an extra cool thing. They were like, how do you guys plan that power outage? And then you came in as a band. It was so special, it was almost like a magic trick. And I don't think we ever admitted that we were like flying by the seat of our pants. We were really like freaking out as to what was happening.
So I think for leaders out there, and beyond the music industry, it says a lot when you're thrown a curveball and you're on stage and in front of others and they're watching you, and how you react, that calm, cool, collected, just make it work. And that says a lot. And I think, to your point, experience being one of the most critical parts. In Pen Leader, that's exactly what we talk about, is having the experience and the education to be sharp. And in a moment's notice like that, nothing substitutes for experience and understanding about how you react and how people actually look at you. What are the other characteristics? I know there's an opportunity there to suggest to others who want to become musicians, especially if they're young. Any last words on advisement if they really want to become a musician and they want to pursue this?
Absolutely. And I feel like that's something that I was so eager to jump into in the beginning of our conversation. So this might be a very fitting way to kind of round it up, or make it come full circle. Earlier, I may have mentioned that it's important to do it because of great love for it. So being a college professor, I get to see a lot of eager, talented, young, up-and-coming musicians trying to figure out their path in life, their purpose, their passion, or their musical preferences, their strengths and such. And like I mentioned earlier, I do see a lot of excitement. Like, they're excited to learn a new song, they're excited to learn a new style, they're excited to learn a new concept or something like that. But most young musicians don't like to think about the business side of things, how to be an entity, how to be a sort of a small business, essentially, how to market or promote oneself. And a lot of that comes from experience. You just have to do it. Like, for instance, at some point, every musician has to go into a venue, like a bar, a restaurant, and say, this is what I do, hire me. And that doesn't always go the way you want to. Some people will ignore, or some people will say maybe, or you just have to try and do a lot of those things. Or getting a gig with a band, like having an audition, right? You show up and you play, and you have to be ready for somebody to say, sorry, but it's a no, and you can't be crestfallen over that,
So don't give up.
Exactly. So you have to have tenacity. Absolutely. Tenacity. That's what I'm saying. It has to be a passionate thing. Like, you have to be pursuing it and doing it. And one thing that goes a long way is just being reliable and being a nice person, right? You could be a great player, but if you're difficult to work with, no one's going to work. Everyone will just pick somebody who they're comfortable with. Everybody I play music with is somebody that I can get along with really well, on stage or off stage, and trust. Those stories you hear about bands fighting and whatever, that's almost like a thing of the rock stars or whatever, like stuff of like movies or whatever. In real life, you want to have just a strong team, just like same that you would want to have like in a good office environment. Like, you want to have people that if you want them to do something, they'll do it, and they got your back, and they'll play beautifully. And at the end of the day, everyone's happy. Like, the client is happy, the audience is happy, and the musicians, hopefully played the best they did and had fun doing it,
That's very good. Well, I can't thank you enough for those words of wisdom, especially that they really apply across a number of industries. But you're an amazing musician, and I'm so glad you were able to come on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Gore. Thank you.
And so for our listeners, please make sure you subscribe and share this information. I hope that you picked up some great words of wisdom here, especially depending on what industry you're in. about that experience, relying on that and how to pivot, especially if you're having challenges, unexpected challenges. And of course, being able to think of your team, rely on your team, trust, and keeping the tenacity in the front. If you really have the passion, go get that prize. So until next time.
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shanda Gore and brought to you by Mays & Associates Ltd, creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.